What's going on? Zach H. FBA here, bringing you another YouTube video today going over the 6 things that I wish I knew when I first started my Amazon FBA business, and I'll briefly go over right now what I do on Amazon FBA. So I sell everyday name brand products that you can source from places like Target, Walmart, Kohl's, JCPenney, Macy's, all of the above, and you can use discount codes and gift cards to help buy these products for a cheaper price and resell them on Amazon. So like I said today, going over the 6 things that I wish I knew before I ever started, and here we go. So the biggest thing that I wanted to hit on first and foremost, the 6 things that you should know before starting an Amazon FBA business. Number 1 is profit versus revenue. So revenue, you'll often see a lot of Amazon influencers and people out there flexing or boasting their large sales numbers like, oh, 10 million, 20 million, whatever it might be. Or I did, $680,000 last month or whatever. Whatever that number is that you see, you need to be mindful that that isn't actually the profit or the money that they're taking home. And just like some of you might be, 4 or 5 years ago, I'd see these videos and I would assume those yellow bars or those large revenue numbers, I'd be like, okay, that must be what this person is making. How on earth am I ever going to be able to compete or make that much money just like they're doing? So really understanding all the factors and costs that come into play in terms of revenue and profit. We have our Amazon fees, storage fees throughout Amazon, prep fees that you're either paying employees yourself or you're paying a prep center. Also your return rate. That's going to be your return rate is going to dig into your profits a lot more than you think, and it can also be mitigated by ensuring you're selling products that have a lower return rate than others. And my advice for this would be starting out maybe selling some apparel and clothing and shoes and all that stuff, but not really building your entire business around apparel and shoes, because those are some of the more returned items. However, I do think they're great to start with because they're easier to prep, especially if you're doing all the prep in-house and stuff like that. It can definitely help start and scale an Amazon business, but it's important to find stuff to transition out of. Number 2 now, the second most important thing that I learned throughout the second strongest I wish I knew factor when I first started Amazon FBA was cash flow is king. So Amazon pays on a 2-week cycle, but the expenses hit every single day. So when you're operating your business, you have bills due throughout the month at any random given day, and Amazon pays on a 2-week cycle. However, I would recommend using Amazon Express payouts where you can take daily payouts. This definitely helps mitigate any cash flow crunches that might happen within your business. However, back to cash flow, if you have stale inventory that's been sitting in Amazon FBA warehouses for longer than 3 to 4 weeks and you're not lowering your price to sell through that inventory, you're making a grave mistake, because it is important to get rid of that inventory, sell it as soon as possible so that you can recoup that cash flow to the bank, and it's going to help you pay all the bills that you have due much easier and give a lot less, or take away a lot less stress from you when you're running your business. So another thing I wanted to hit on was utilizing data that you get from like Keepa, SellerAmp, all the data acquisition, products that you're going to be using to sell all the items that you're going to sell on Amazon, and to help you scale your business to a greater number than you did the previous month. You need to use all that data. So the data from Keepa and SellerAmp is crucial, but also nothing is more important or more useful than your previous data that you've collected from selling, say, a test buy of a product, selling through an item that you've bought from a distributor, buying items from distributors and figuring out what their reject rate is when they send stuff to you. Because if you order 1,000 units from a distributor, and every time that you buy something from them, a box shows up damaged and you have to throw away a certain percentage of that inventory, it's all important to track all that data so that you can use that to make more informed buying decisions and help you scale your business smartly. So pretty much take all that data and use all that data to take all the guesswork out of running your business. There's definitely not, you don't want to have a gut feeling of oh yeah, I know that this product is popular, so I know it's going to sell, even though the data doesn't really translate that. You're like, oh no, but I have this gut feeling, and you're operating on guesswork, not fine, set in stone data. And you want to make sure that you're always operating on that fine, set in stone data. The number 4 thing that I wish I knew before I started was understanding what wholesale actually is, because a lot of sellers will start with online arbitrage, which is what I recommend people starting with, because it's going to help you learn all the Amazon backend data and all that stuff that is required of you. You're required to learn and know all that stuff in order to be a good wholesale seller. So pretty much the thing that I found out about wholesale was it's not necessarily just about wholesale buying and selling. Wholesale is a whole new game. It's a relationship game. You need to be constantly keeping in touch with your suppliers or brands that you're working with. It's not something where you can just set it and forget it. You know, you call them up a couple times, haggle them over the phone, and all of a sudden, boom, you have this brand direct wholesale deal that's better than ever. You need to ensure that those relationships are being managed in order for you to scale properly. That's why starting with online arbitrage takes that relationship management aspect out of the game, because you're just focused on product sourcing, analyzing data, buying the products, getting them prepped yourself, or getting them to a prep center to be shipped and sold off to Amazon. When you try to get into wholesale right away, you're adding a whole nother dynamic to the game of relationship management, having to constantly be on the phone, answering emails between you and your supplier or brands. It's just a whole new aspect to the game that being a brand new seller, you're already drinking through a fire hose. I've said it time and time again, but I'll keep on saying it. You're drinking through a fire hose to get your Amazon FBA business started. You don't need to add another dynamic that's going to make it even harder, especially at the start. Fifth most important thing that I wish I knew when starting out with Amazon FBA was that Amazon and their account health system can absolutely kill your business overnight. So I've had a couple account health scares. I've been fortunate, knock on wood, to never have been shut down or a Section 3 suspension. However, I have definitely had some brand review scares and stuff like that where I was the owner of a lot of inventory at the time, and I needed to provide a ton of invoices to solve issues very quickly due to inauthentic complaints and CSM brand reviews, stuff like that. These kind of situations definitely add a lot of stress to running the business, because you're under the gun to come up with a solution as fast as possible. So it is absolutely imperative to monitor and maintain a solid account health score, and just making sure that you're double checking your performance notifications every day, checking your emails in the morning. I know Amazon, for some weird reason, they like to send those texts of like, you've been issued an inauthentic complaint or a product condition customer complaint or anything really. They like to send those out at like 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be like even earlier in the morning the further west you go in the United States. So they like to make sure that you wake up to those emails and stuff like that, but it's definitely important to monitor them. As much as they might be like a cause of a lot of stress, it is important when you see those notifications to take action and resolve them swiftly and as immediately as possible. So definitely important to know there. The sixth most important thing that I wish I knew prior to starting Amazon FBA is to treat it like a business, not a side hustle. So it's absolutely important to treat this like a business. Don't operate it. You can operate it at first as a side hustle if you're trying to test the waters and see how you're going to go about things. This is just my weekend side hustle. I make a little bit of money sourcing products from Walmart, eBay, anything really online, and I'm flipping them on Amazon. It's a little side hustle that you got going on. Once you start treating it more like a business and something that you're going to rely on for your personal income, that's when you're really going to notice that this business has, the 10x potential that you're, whether you're doing like 10 to 20K a month, making an extra $1,000 to $2,000 profit. And if you start treating it like a business, you realize how quickly that this can become a $100,000 to $200,000 a month business and make me an extra $10,000 to $20,000 a month to, absolutely change your life. So the more that you think about that, you're implementing strategies, doing proper bookkeeping, hiring VAs for admin tasks, and implementing SOPs with those VAs as well, so that that they're doing the job that you hired them to do every single day. And that's really important when you're running a business overall, never mind a mainly online business, because it is mainly run online. So, all right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video today. It's time for me to go get some lunch, so I will see you in the next video. Like I said, please do like, follow, and subscribe. Also feel free to book a 30-minute call with me in the description down below. Thank you.